Good evening, everybody. It is so good to see all of you here. At least in Chicago, the weather is really good. And I'm sure all of us may want to kind of go for a walk or enjoy nature. But I'm so glad that all of you decided to join this discussion today. On behalf of Harvard alumni organizations, we are very, very proud that we were able to create a platform to organize so many different discussions on very relevant topics. Like Van Gogh has said that great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. So when we create these events, our hope is that we will be able to come together.
Oh dear, wait a minute. Hold
Can
on.
everybody mute yourself, please? Thank you so much. So
Someone's
the
in there
hope is
crying.
that through these platforms and through these discussions, we can all come together, think together, and create that ripple effect and bring about a social change. Before coming to the topic and introducing the speakers, I would like to invite the president of Harvard Women in Defense, Diplomacy and Development, Ms. Theodora Skiadas, to introduce the organizations to us.
Sure. Thanks so much, Let's so very excited to be here. I am dually hatted as the president of W3D, Women in Defense, Diplomacy and Development, which works to empower women in those three spaces and also bridge conversation between those spaces. Very often, people working in defense, diplomacy, and development are siloed, but their work happens in the same context and obviously very much impacts the work of each of the other spaces. So what we do is we work to build conversations between those spaces. I don't have my passport. All right, there we go. And also we work to empower women who are historically underrepresented as actors and leaders in these three spaces. So we have that dual prong mission at W3D, and then at the HKS Women's Network, I'm also co-chair, and we work to empower women, HKS graduates, to better fulfill the school's public service mission of building a better world. And we have about 6,000 to 7,000 members at the Women's Network and just over 2,000 at W3D. So both are really wonderful communities. I'll put a link in the chat for folks who want to join either of these groups. You're welcome to join. Membership is open. And thank you, Litzy, so much for organizing this really wonderful event. This is such an important subject.
Thank you so much, Theo. So today we have four organizations co-sponsoring this event. As Theo said, we have W3D as well as HKS Women's Network. But along with that, we have Alumni Network for Harvard Women, as well as Harvard Law Society of Illinois, who have joined us to organize this event. It's really great that Harvard has these support interest groups like all these organizations where we can focus on issues that are specific to alumni interests. So today we are going to have a discussion on still broken sexual harassment in the legal field. I am very excited to introduce two amazing speakers, Ms. Corey Amron and Ms. Corinne Power. I met Corinne through an organization, and we had a discussion about this topic. And it's only recently that I got to know them, but the dedication and commitment and genuine, dedication to kind of bring about a change is really, really inspiring. So let me introduce Ms. Corey Amron first. Ms. Corey Amron is the president of Women Lawyers on Guard. Women Lawyers Guard is a national network of women and men that harnesses the power of law to protect and defend equality, justice, and equal opportunity for all. Throughout her 40 years of legal career, Ms. Amron has actively worked on women's rights, diversity issues, and to enhance legal awareness of the public. Ms. Amron was the intellectual property partner of Voris, Sater, Seymour, and Peace LLP. She was the second chair of the American Bar Association Commission on Women in the Legal Profession. She worked on the issue of sexual harassment in the legal profession before, during, and after Anita Hill testified before the Senate at Clarence Thomas's confirmation hearing in 1991. She was a member of the ABA Commission on Domestic Violence, the McRae Task Force on Law Schools and the Profession, ABA President's Advisory Council on Diversity, the Standing Committee on Public Education, and the chair of the ABA Gavel Awards Committee. She is a past chair of the American Bar Foundation Fellows DC chapter and has held numerous positions in the Women's Bar Association of the District of Columbia. She was named a Star of the Bar by the WBA in 2003. She received the WBA's Women Lawyer of the Year Award in 2004. She's our very own Harvard alumni from Harvard Law School. Welcome, Ms. Corey Amron. And thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us today.
Thank you, Litzy. Thank you.
Ms. Corinne Parva. She's a vice president of Women Lawyers on Guard Action Network, a national network of women and men advocating to protect and defend equality, justice, and equal opportunity for all. She recently served as the co-chair of the Women Lawyers on Guard Committee, responsible for developing, deploying, and drafting of the nationwide experiential survey on sexual harassment and misconduct in the legal profession, namely Still Broken. This is the report they'll be discussing with us today. Ms. Parver is a former partner and head of the health law services practice at the Washington, D.C. law firm Dickstein Shapiro. After retiring from the law firm in 2004, she designed the Health Law and Policy Project for the American University Washington College of Law. She expanded the law school's health law curriculum and established the Law and Government's health law specialization in their LLM program. She established the annual Summer Health Law and Policy Institute in 2008. Currently, Ms. Power is also the Secretary Treasurer of the Holy Cross Health Foundation Board of Trustees. She has extensively published, testified before congressional committees, and lectured in the United States and Canada on healthcare topics during her career. Welcome, Ms. Corinne Power, and thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us today. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to Corey and Corinne so that they can share the heartbreaking yet very important findings of their research. The floor is yours.
So much. Let's see. I really appreciate you allowing us to give this presentation, and also for the 4 organizations that combine to have such a wonderful audience for us. You explained, Litzy, a little bit about Women Lawyers on Guard and its sister organization, Women Lawyers on Guard Action Network. We've been concentrating over the last 3 years in particular on several areas: sexual harassment, of course, that we'll be talking about tonight, gender equality, including ERA and gender pay equity, and also women's health, including reproductive rights. Before we begin, however, what I'd like to have you do, Litzy, is if you could have a poll for our attendees to start the presentation.
Can you see? So you can take a few seconds, like 30 seconds and so, and submit your responses, and we'll share the polling results immediately. We just have 5 or 6 more participants to participate in the poll. I'll give a few more seconds for you to complete the poll.
Yes, in the last 20 years, do you think incidents of sexual harassment are being addressed more effectively?
I'm going to show the results of the polling now.
Okay, great. Okay, so it's pretty close. Got 39, 33, and not sure 28. And honestly, this is the reason that we did our survey. So if, let's see, can you take the poll down?
I've stopped it. Can you still see the poll?
I can, but I don't know if other people can. Okay, all right. I think maybe you have to.
I think we're all set. Folks can just turn it off independently.
Okay, great. Okay, so as I said, to answer that question is really the reason why we did this survey. So today we're here to talk about the survey findings. We're here to give voice to the people who responded to the survey. We're going to talk a little bit about recommendations and our next initiative in this area. And then we're going to give you some ways that you too can take some action. And of course, we're going to answer your questions. So why did we do this nationwide survey? We're a small organization. We are volunteer driven. And we're all about doing something, being effective, but not duplicating what other people are doing. We knew we wanted to do something about sexual harassment. We wanted to answer the question that you've just pondered. And we wanted to do this in the legal profession because for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that's the profession that that Corinne and I and our organization know the best. But also because, the legal profession is supposed to know the laws, right? And so we had heard a lot about what was happening in entertainment industry and politics, but not a whole lot about what was happening in the legal profession. So we talked to a number of experts about what we might wish to do. And what we heard was two perspectives. Well, I should say we talked to experts and we talked to a lot of people just in the profession. The first perspective we heard, particularly from older people, but not just older people, was, that was something that happened 20 years ago, and we've dealt with that. We put policies into place, and it's not happening anymore. And then we would talk to sometimes younger people, a lot of younger people, but not exclusively younger people. And we would say things like, well, we hear that things have gotten better. And then they would look at us and they would say, I don't know why you're saying that. And then they would proceed to tell this horrible stories about hair-raising things that have happened to them just last week, or their colleagues or their friends. And so we had two diametrically opposed perspectives on what was happening. So we were also told, and so it led us to think, it sounds like we need to do something about this. What should we do? And we were told that lawyers need evidence in order to drive change. In other words, they needed to know that there was still a problem in order to address it in a different way than was being addressed over the last 20 years. And so what we decided to do was to do a nationwide survey and just see what was happening. Now, before I change the slide, I just wanted to tell you that the survey instrument gave people a lot of multiple choice questions that they could answer, but they could also write in whatever they wanted to say for a lot of the questions. And we got 50 pages of comments and and quotes from our survey respondents. And so we've culled some of those for the presentation tonight, and we're going to be reading them to you. And we want you to imagine that those people are here right now and they're telling you their story. If you go to our website and download the report, you'll also see there's an entire appendix filled with these stories. So here are some.
My career as I knew it was destroyed by sexual harassment. I suffered the loss of my job. It took me 2 decades to recover. Nothing happened to my harasser. He continued in his high-level position. I thought it was the price for being a successful female in a male-dominated profession. I was raped by a board member, a customer of a nonprofit, who was allowed to voluntarily resign from the board, but he faced no other consequences, and I am expected to still deal with him.
So our study is what we call an experiential study, not a prevalent study. And what that means is we didn't ask, how many of you were sexually harassed. We're not looking for percentages and numbers. The reason for that is, as I mentioned, we don't like to duplicate what other people have done. And other people have done those surveys in the legal profession. You'll see some of them in the footnotes of our study. About 50 to 59% of women lawyers report experiencing sexual harassment. So instead, what we did was an experiential study, a deep dive into what people are experiencing. We asked them about the culture of their firms, where incidents occurred, about the reporting, the experiences, the impact on them, the consequences to the harassers, and the effect of compounding factors, intersectionality factors. Some of the questions we asked allowed us to see changes over time. Certain issues, we asked them, for instance, when they were telling us about incidents, we asked them to tell us when those incidents occurred. And some of the questions we asked when these, the answers that they were giving, when those occurred. And so, again, we'll be able to tell some things over time. We deployed the survey around the country. We got a pretty representative sample of attorneys from around the country in each region. Likewise, we got a very representative sample of attorneys in all employment settings, including law students. We got attorneys in the government and public interest and of course, law firms, corporations, et cetera. The demographics of the respondents were pretty representative as well. The percentage in terms of ethnicity and racial composition, as well as sexual orientation and gender identity. The age fell within a bell curve. So the only thing that wasn't representative, if you will, was, although we did ask men to respond, 7% of our respondents were men. So you can see that the respondents in all respects were representative of our profession. I put this as the link to where you can access the report. Even if you just go to our website, womenlawyersonguard.org, you'll find a number of ways to get to this page, and you can pull up the report. So what did we ask them? We asked them, what have you experienced or observed? And by observed, we told them that we meant that they were in the room where it happened. And they were able to pick from a list of about 13 types of behaviors, everything ranging from offensive jokes to sexualized name calling, intrusive and unwanted requests for dates, stalking, and attempted or actual sexual assault. So this is a word cloud, which is actually a graph. So you'll see that the most of what people were, or a lot of what people were reporting were offensive jokes, not as much attempted sexual assault. But this is a current word cloud. And if you looked at this word cloud from 30 years ago, you'll see that the offensive jokes are smaller and the attempted or actual sexual assaults is larger.
Our report highlights 6 salient findings of the research study. First, the extent and breadth of misconduct and harassment are insidious and alarming. Second, the reporting systems often don't work. Sometimes they are actually harmful. Third, most harassers face few to no adverse consequences. Fourth, the price that women in particular pay and the cost to the profession are considerable. Fifth, people at every level are being harassed. Some are very powerful. And finally, age, race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation, gender identity are compounding factors. And now we're going to delve into each one of these salient findings one at a time. First, the extent and breadth of misconduct harassment are insidious and alarming. And here's another quote from one of the survey respondents. Even though this happened to me once when I was a law student over 30 years ago, it still haunts me.
So here was a question about the culture in which the incident occurred, the culture of the employment setting in which the incident occurred. Here's some, this is a graph where we can see changes over time. So 30 years ago, the employment setting was often part of the culture. So they could answer often part of the culture or somewhat part of the culture where people got away with it, or rarely. So what happened in that incident was definitely out of the norm for the culture. So you see some improvement here. Currently, often part of the culture is now 25%. But if you look here at somewhat part of the culture where people get away with it, you'll see that it's 48%. And if you're a math whiz and you add these two together, so these are the places where it often happens or it's part of the culture, people let it happen, you'll see that 30 years ago was 89% of the incidents were in these types of cultures. And currently 73% of the incidents were these types of cultures. And so we call this the less bad news. Not good news, but less bad. So poll 2, let's pull up poll 2. Okay, in the last 20, in the last 20 years, do you think, no, wait, that's poll 1. Okay, do you think that all sexual harassment behaviors are perpetrated by supervisors?
We'll give a few more seconds. 72% of people have voted. If other folks need a few more seconds, we'll just keep the poll open for a few more seconds. Okay, we'll close the poll now and show the results.
Okay, everybody, you got that right. 100% got that one right. So I'll change the slide. Okay, hold on a second. Oops, get rid of that. Okay. So who's doing the harassing? And the answer is exactly what you've said. The people at every level of the profession are doing the harassing. We see a little bit of improvement in certain situations here. So we have, again, 30 years ago, we have more judges, incidents, more judges harassing, less currently. Another bit of good news here is that professors, 30 years ago, the harassment here and here is less. So less incidents reported. So that's some improvement. On the other hand, we see that attorney partners and supervisors are really out there still. And also we've got clients doing the harassing. And of course, we still have judges and we still have professors. So that's not great news. So here's something that we found very interesting. You know, there's a myth about the setting in which harassment occurs. And that is that people think it occurs in private settings, you know, so nobody else can hear what's going on. But our results show that there is a large percentage of incidents that happen in group meetings, whether they are on-site or off-site group meetings. And this tells us a couple of things. First of all, that following the Pence rule, you know, where a man refuses to be alone with the woman, that's obviously not going to help the situation of harassment because it's happening in groups. And the second thing it tells us is that bystander intervention is not working. And it is imperative that we get it working. And we'll talk a little bit about that in our recommendations. But this is really an interesting result, an unfortunate, interesting result.
So let's look at the second finding. Reporting systems often don't work. Sometimes they're actually harmful. Here's another quote from one of the survey respondents. For me, the reporting process did at least as much damage as the original rape.
So there's a lot to unpack in this slide, and I will direct you with my cursor here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. Oh, somebody's trying to get in. Okay, so if you look at the middle graph, you'll see this is a graph currently of incidents that people, we asked whether they reported the incident, okay, currently. And we found that if you look at this part here, they did not report, okay? This part here, they also did not report. The difference between these two colors, though, is here they did not report and they didn't want to report. But the gray here, they did not report, but they wanted to report, okay? Wanted to report, but did not. So if you add these two together, again, the math whizzes out there, you get 86% of the incidents today, currently, are not being reported. Okay, 86% are not being reported. Now, if you go over to this graph, you see, well, if they did report, were the people to whom they reported supportive? 40% of those incidents, they were supportive, but 41% they were not, either not supportive or it was harmful. Harkening back to the quote that Corrine read. And then if you go to this graph here, and again, you know, I know that some of these are difficult to see, and if you go to the report itself, you can study them further. But this graph shows the barriers to reporting. Why don't people report? You'll see that they think it's not going to do any good. Okay, the employer is not going to take any action, and look how much the same 30 years ago and currently these barriers are. They feared for their job. They feared that they would lose a job or promotion. Other kinds of obstacles. So here's one. Even today, the harasser is the person that they have to report to. So, and by the way, if anybody has any questions, I can't see the Q&A or the chat, you know, please do put them in there.
Corey, there's a question in the chat asking, who are they reporting to? Is it the HR or the police, or do you have any information on that?
Yes, they are reporting to a number of different places. They're reporting to HR, they're reporting to their managers, excuse me, whatever their particular policy required, or who they happen to think was the right person to go to. And again, it depends on the employment setting. If it's a corporation, it's one thing. If it's a law firm, it could be something else. So when we say that, we do have some statistics of breaking down as between HR and some other reporting systems, which ones were worse or better. I don't have them right here, but they are in the report.
Let's move on to the third finding. Most harassers face few to no adverse consequences after reporting. That kind of links into some of the statistics that we saw on the prior graph. And here's a quote from one of the respondents. So, reporting sexual harassment ended my big law firm career. Nothing, absolutely nothing happened to my harasser. I eventually sued and my name was dragged through the mud, further damaging my career.
So if you look at this graph, and again, these are only the ones that were reported. Obviously, there can't be consequences if someone doesn't report something. So 50%, in 50% of the incidents reported, there was absolutely no consequences to the harasser. And in another 20%, the person who was harassed did not know what happened because their employer never told them. So if you add those two together, you get the impression, if you're a person who's thinking of reporting, that, again, nothing is going to happen.
Our fourth finding, the price that women in particular pay and the cost of the profession are considerable. I thought it was the price for being a successful female in a male-dominated profession.
So here is, I think we need to mute somebody there.
All the attendees are requested to mute your microphones.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. So the impact on the respondents, again, this is a word cloud, and these are the types of things that people reported as a consequence of the harassing incidents. Many, many people, loss of productivity was huge. If you can imagine sitting around every day and wondering if this person is, or people are going to come and harass you, very anxiety producing, lots of negative impacts on your career, a huge fear of retaliation if they did report, and loss of confidence. So that led us to our conclusion here that those who are harassed face much harsher consequences than those doing the harassing. And here are some direct and indirect costs of that impact the profession at large. We didn't study this, but if you look at Lauren Raclean's book, The Shield of Silence, she has a lot of information about this. The direct costs, as you can imagine, are litigation costs, attorney's fees, and large awards, worker compensation claims. But the indirect costs here are turnover, absenteeism, as we mentioned, loss of productivity, damage to the employer's reputation, and low employee morale. People are constantly talking about these kinds of things. It's almost never a secret.
Our fifth finding, people at every level.
Wait.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Oops. We just, our poll number 3.
Oh, I thought we would do that after we.
Yeah, no, but this answers that question. So anyway, let's try poll number 3.
Let's see.
Okay, do you think that all the people who are harassed are in subordinate positions? The opposite of the question we asked before.
We'll give a few more seconds for those who have not yet submitted their responses.
Okay.
We shall close the polling and share the results.
You are again, you guys are getting an A in this course. So,
Sam's later, right, Corey?
yes, really,
All right,
unfortunately.
let's move on to the fifth finding, where we go into a little bit more detail on this. People at every level indeed are being harassed, some very powerful people. Here's a quote. I was a member of the judiciary, and the harasser was an employee of a government agency. Having a position of authority didn't matter. I still feared that reporting the incident would impact my chances for advancement and label me as a problem. I still experienced anxiety about reporting.
So here's that person, this judge. People at every level of the profession are harassed. You're absolutely correct. And here we find partners, supervisors being harassed. We have judges, we have professors, we have CEOs, general counsel, and of course we have the people that you would, quote, expect. And those are, the associates and the staff. So let's move to the next finding.
Sixth finding, respondents reported compounding factors, and you can see them up on the screen. Corey?
Yeah, so 37% believed that their age, basically young age, was a compounding factor, but 15% felt that their race or ethnicity was an intersectionality factor. Sexual orientation and gender identity, also intersectional factors, and religion, nationality, disability. So now we're going to talk a little bit about these recommendations. These recommendations are actually culled from the people who responded to our survey. Again, we don't want to duplicate. There are a lot of people out there recommending things about what to do about sexual harassment. And so here are some of our respondents' suggestions. Identify problem cultures. We showed you the slide that indicated that cultures can change. They have changed. We did see that the often culture has gotten better. So we can do it. We can do it. It's just that we need more work on this. We also need to be sure that the strategies that we're putting in place are tailored. So one size doesn't fit all. Corporations are different from law firms, are different from nonprofits. They're all are different from the government. And if everybody is just buying the off-the-shelf sexual harassment training that they put up on their computer and have everybody, click through, it's just, that's not, we call that the check the box training, and it's not working. I mean, there are really good training situations out there, but they need to be tailored to the employment setting. Concrete, we mentioned about intervention tools and bystander intervention training. When we talked about the situation, we found sexual harassment, a lot of it going on in group settings. This is a really good bottom-up tool. If you don't have top-down buy-in and top-down culture, of course, I would say top-down culture is the best. But if you don't have that, you really need some bottom-up tools. And this is one of them, effective bystander intervention training. At the moment, when it happens, people call it out. But the problem is that's not easy to do. Even female partners report to us that they don't do it. And some of the reasons they don't do it is that the harasser is the person who they get most of their work from, let's say at a law firm, or some other power reason why it's not done. It's not easy to do. Frankly, it's a lot easier for the men to do it, but they don't do it either because they fear the wimp factor. So, this is something that needs a lot more work. More transparency. It's not acceptable that people don't know. 20% of the incidents, they didn't know what happened. And when the person, when the employment setting also doesn't know what happened, they just assume that the employer's not doing anything about it. And it's a vicious cycle. So if they think no one's doing anything about it, then they don't report it. But on the other hand, if there were more transparency and people understood that there was consequences, the people in the employment setting could step in and report, particularly if that person were doing it again, let's say, and there would be watchdogs that would know that that the employer had their back, and also that that people were watching. And I know that people hide behind, privacy requirements, but there are ways to do this. And frankly, everybody knows that this is going on. So it's not a private situation. It's not a secret. And so to say that we can't tell people that there were consequences seems to me a fallacious argument.
We need more effective accountability. Not every behavior is cause for termination, but every misbehavior needs a consequence. Systems need to be much more accountable. It's just not acceptable in law firm settings, for example, that a partner harasser just moves on to the next law firm, taking his book of business with him, leaving the firm with the fallout, whether it's damages in a lawsuit, people left behind with no work, or worse, consequences for the person harassed, as we've seen, and none for the harasser, as one of the slides that Corey pointed out.
So here's one way to have more effective individual accountability, and that is in the rules of professional conduct, which is a whole nother topic that would take another hour to discuss. But there is a movement to, the ABA has actually passed 8.4G, which would include discipline for people who are sexual harassers and also other types of behavior.
On this issue at a much earlier age. As we stated, the problem of sexual harassment isn't unique to the legal profession. It didn't begin full blown when people entered law school. It's an invidious problem of gender stereotypes that transcend psychology, sociology, cultures, and the law. Supporting work on these issues at an earlier age, and we always joke that maybe we should be starting in preschool or kindergarten, but could nip in the bud some of these unacceptable behaviors and attitudes. Additional options for independent investigations and reporting systems. When internal investigations and reporting aren't working, there should be other options short of filing a lawsuit. For example, Time's Up and a nonprofit called Callisto give counseling options. Callisto and a small handful of other organizations have developed novel secure reporting repositories and systems. Utilizing the reporting and investigation processes of the attorney disciplinary system is another good option. But the state has to have a rule of professional conduct that covers this behavior. Many don't. We need more creative options like those.
Okay, so these last two that we're going to discuss seek better understanding through frank and nuanced conversations and develop active male allies whose efforts are now mostly missing in combating sexual harassment. These two are the basis of our next initiative in this area. And we call this initiative Conversations with Men because that's exactly what it's going to be. We will have very small groups, professionally facilitated, discussing what it's like to practice law in the Me Too era. Not echo chambers. This is really honest conversation. And we're looking for two goals here. One is maybe to figure out some better ways to address this sexual harassment coming from the male perspective. And also the second recommendation here, which is to develop active male allies. We're working assiduously on this now. We have a consultant, we have a facilitator, we have some men who are interested in participating. Actually, our facilitator is a Harvard professor. And we've drafted up some active male ally steps. And so one of the things we'll be asking you is maybe to nominate some people, some men who might be good people to participate in this. So let me just play a 2-minute video about these conversations. Raise your hand if you can hear it. Hold on a second.
We don't have to live with things that are illegal and abusive.
Can you hear it?
We don't have to live with being raped when we think we're going to a business meeting.
Unpacking the nature of sexual harassment in the legal workplace needs to include men as part of the solution. Intense, professionally facilitated conversations with men are necessary to find better, creative ideas that will foster growth, empowerment, and employment successes of all women lawyers, especially women of color.
Men have to play an active role in eliminating sexual harassment in the workplace. Women Lawyers on Guard's Candid Conversations project will help us be strong allies, ambassadors, and active agents of change.
Only a handful of people are looking at male allies as a solution to gender inequity, even as studies show its effectiveness. None focus on lawyers who are strong change agents. We will measure our effect on participants, employment settings, and the profession at large.
Final 2 quotes from survey respondents. Ultimately, this is all about power and respect, or lack thereof, in the workplace. The powerful still protect each other. There's still enormous pressure not to challenge the powerful. I believe that we still have a long way to go in terms of changing mindsets in the legal profession. And finally, I never regret saying something. I always regret not saying something.
Okay, so our last slide is about you taking action, and then we'll take some questions. We ask you to share the report widely. We still would like to have a lot of these people, employers, managing partners, supervisors, et cetera, knowing what the results of this survey were, so that no one could hide behind the, I don't think it's happening anymore. We would ask that you support our next initiative, Conversations with Men. We are probably going to launch this in late summer, early September, let's say. Still gathering funds to do that. We ask that you join us. We don't have a membership fee. It's totally free. We don't send lots and lots and lots of emails every day. We only send you notices of things that are important. And as I mentioned before, we'd like you to nominate male attorneys. Again, these are people who maybe are not sure about how to act with women. I'm not sure whether they can take them to lunch, or they may be male allies already, but you think these are people who could step it up a bit further. We're going to give them iterative steps. It's going to be easy for them to do this. So thank you so much for your attention, and we welcome your questions. And I think what I'll do is pull this down so we can see people. Okay.
Thank you so much, Corey and Corinne. That was a very good presentation and so many facts. Although when we hear and when we see the facts, it's really quite shocking. So this is the time for Q&A. If anyone would like to ask a question, you can use the chat feature, or you can just raise your hands and start your question.
I think I want to also respond to is this HR or the police?
Yes.
Yeah, they didn't, they were not reporting to the police. I think that's fair to say. That they were reporting to, the people who did report were reporting in their employment settings.
You can imagine how difficult that is if the person is working in a small law firm, for example, where there are just 3 lawyers and the HR person is the spouse of the managing partner of the law firm. It's just not successful. We have to develop other ways in which people in those situations can report.
We heard one example or one story of a woman who was a legislator in state legislature, and she was at a reception that she was told she really needed to go to. She was a newly elected legislator, and she thought she needed to mingle amongst all types and everybody. And again, these are her colleagues. And one of the guys, came up to her from behind and just put his hands, just, you can imagine, just all over her. And afterwards, she went to some of her women colleagues and told them what happened. And they looked it up to see in the policy, who is it that she should be reporting it to? And wouldn't you know, the head of the committee that she's supposed to report to was this man. So, needless to say, that's not effective.
I don't know if you covered it, but how many people did you interview in this research?
Well, when you say interview, we didn't interview people.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I would have loved to have been able to not have the resources to do that. We had a couple of thousand people, again, around the country.
And can you talk a little about the cultural upbringing or cultural conditioning of women in terms of not addressing the harasser or in general?
Well, that's not my area of expertise, but, from the things that I have read and seen and experienced, women are, for the most part, not all women, but for the most part are, brought up to be polite and not confrontational. And it's interesting because when I first started working on these gender issues as when I was on the ABA Commission on Women in the Profession, this is now back in the late 80s. There was a lot of discussion, still discussion today, about, oh, well, women, can't be effective lawyers because they're just not aggressive enough, and they're not confrontational enough, and all that. And yet, when women are aggressive enough and confrontational, they're called bitches and, all kinds of things like that. So there's this very fine line that women are walking on a tightrope between oh, there's too namby-pamby, oh, they can't possibly be good lawyers, which is of course ridiculous because there's lots of men who are, have different styles of lawyering, and being too aggressive and bitches and all of that. So, so it's not just in the harassment area that women have these problems, but it's in the legal profession in general, where they are perceived in ways that are different from the way the men are perceived. And there's a lot been written about it, and we wrote a lot about it 30 odd years ago. So it's unfortunately still an issue.
Fear of retaliation and backlash, being, named someone who's not cooperative, and lose the ability to do work for people in certain areas where the person was the harasser. And, you go to law school, you accumulate 3 years of $100,000 plus debt each year, and you need to be able to work. And if you get a reputation of being, quote unquote, a troublemaker because you're bringing these things up, it's not only a question of the overall culture, but it's a work-related issue. There was a question I saw pop up in the chat, and I can't see it anymore. If you
I can see it.
Anna, would you like to ask your question? Yeah, I think Cody, you can.
Yeah, I can read. It says, have you found that regular training on sexual harassment has been beneficial at reducing incidents? We did not ask that question in our survey, so I can't tell you that we found that. I guess that would be intuitive, that if you had, the more training you have, the more sensitive you might be. The problem is, what kind of training is that? We heard a lot of stories about people walking by guys, let's say, on their computer, taking this training, and they were like snickering and all of that. So the more they take these types of things where they're snickering at the harassment training, that's not going to help anybody become more sensitive to it. And there are good harassment trainings out there. It just, again, one size doesn't say it all. And so, but certainly talking about it more as opposed to less is beneficial. Also, coming top down is beneficial. And, the old behavior, the behavior of the people at the top obviously has to be, has to follow what they're saying. The people who at the top putting forward policies, and then they go off and have scandals and harass people, et cetera, that, that's obviously not helpful at all. So I think the answer to your question is yes, but it depends on the type of training. And is this training a hands-on training? Is it training that talks about and helps people put themselves in the shoes of the person being harassed? Does it give them words to say? Does it help them be in the moment and know what to say when the harassment is going on? Men as allies to protect women from sex harassment seems counterintuitive. Actually, yeah, it's funny you say that, but even though there are women who are harassing, okay, one of the things we didn't show you in the slides, that definitely not only men that are harassing. Huge majority of the harassment is by men, and you don't have to be a male harasser and then say stop in order to help women. If you are a bystander, oftentimes as men, it's a lot easier to stand up and say, that's not acceptable. There's a lot of conversation that goes on when women are not in the room. And if you have male allies to say, we don't talk about those things that way, that again, in the right, there's a way to say these things. And if we could help people rehearse how to say these things, it will really help the situation. Because part of the reason that this keeps going on is that people are afraid to say anything, and so when people don't say anything, the harasser is emboldened. So male allyship actually has been shown to help. I don't know if I have I don't have the graph here, but there was one study where it showed that when you had men actively working on gender issues in like 96% of the settings, there was progress. Where if you didn't, and it was just the women doing it, which is what we see today mostly, it was something like 36% showed progress. So that's where we got the sense that the male voices are necessary in this conversation, because if you're asking the women to fix a problem that men are causing, the women can work at it all they want, but that's not going to happen. So that's how we get to the male conversation and the male allyship.
Especially if you have a room full of men only and somebody makes a crude joke or says something that's offensive, how embarrassing would it be if one of the other males would say, hey, that's not cool, that's unacceptable, or just put a hand up and say, stop, that's not proper, we don't do that here. It's very, very significant.
Erica, I think Erica has a question. You had raised your hand.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I've just been listening. I graduated law school 50 plus years ago. So this has been interesting to see how a lot of things have stayed the same.
Yes.
That's what we've discovered too.
Yes.
Susan?
Thanks. I do have a question. Obviously, these issues are not at all unique to the legal profession, and we see these institutional issues mirrored in places like, obviously, churches, denominationally, but all denominations, churches, corporations, educational institutions, just name it. So I'm curious. I obviously see value in the work you guys are doing, focusing on the legal profession. I'm curious if there's also, because I'm sure other people are doing these other institutional settings, are there models that are being implemented? Are there folks that are there things we are able to learn from these other settings, when ultimately this, like, it's so multidimensional, I can appreciate that, but we've got the power issue, right? I can just, everything from those are the people in charge to just whether you're in big law or you're in a small city, once people know you're the person who said that person created a problem, there's a lot of attention on you, and that can create issues for you professionally and personally. So there's the power disparity issues, and then oh, I'm sorry, I just sort of lost my train of thought. I had another point, I don't remember it, but essentially I was just wanting to know, because there are unique parts of what you're able to bring to your study, brings unique things to our unique setting, and yet it's mirrored in other areas. And so I'm wondering if you would speak to what you've seen in other places and what we can learn from that, if that's something you can speak to.
I don't know.
I was just going to say that the Time's Up organization that was started a few years ago in Hollywood, actually, with the support now of the National Women's Law Center, is helping women in the restaurant and service industries through providing advice on litigation. so that's one way in which some people are helping. But I know that the marketing women are now, women involved in different industries like marketing are trying to get together and create ways in which they can change their professions and their careers. Because you, as you said, you know, no matter what, medicine, law, engineering,
Tech.
architecture, you know, it's the same power dynamic. And as women rise in these organizations, there are more women now who are CEOs of major companies. Things will start to change. There are some men. We spoke to a group yesterday where the CEO of the company, a man, had, you know, very distinct ways in which he wants his employees and supervisors to act on the issue of behaviors and what's offensive, what isn't. So it's going to take time.
I guess what I would say is that you're absolutely right. We all have the same problem of sexual harassment. We all have the same problem of gender discrimination, gender and other discrimination problems. We can learn from other professions and other employment settings. And I think that one of the things that we are learning is about this allyship, because this stuff, that type of work is being done in other professions and other areas. But I also think that, you know, lawyers sometimes think that they're just above it all, and that they're special somehow. Oh, you know, well, the doctors, you know, they just don't even know about the law. So I'm not suggesting that we're not learning from other areas. We definitely are. Some of the recommendations that we put forth in our slides, a lot of them are being worked on in other ways and in other professions. But certain things like, you know, going at it through the ethics rules is something that other professions are not doing, obviously, because many of them don't have those ethics rules. So those are special to the legal profession. And if we're supposed to be held to a higher standard because we are lawyers, then I think that you know, that's an area ripe for exploring. You know, why is it that we're letting people harass people and discriminate against people and all these things, even if it's not technically the definition of legal sexual harassment? That's one of the things I didn't say actually at the beginning, is that we didn't look just at the legal definition of sexual harassment. We looked at sexual misconduct and harassment, because the effect on the person being harassed can be just as devastating if it's the legal definition or not the legal definition. And so, you know, so I think that just as we are, you know, looking to other professions in other, you know, areas like gender discrimination. So for instance, putting, I know that is it the SEC, Corinne, that is requiring that there be at least one woman on boards of publicly held corporations. There's the Mansfield rule that people in the legal profession are working toward, where, you know, a certain percentage of women should be equity partners. You know, the statistics of women equity partners, I think it's, don't quote me on this, but it's something like it's going to be another 100 years before women are even a third of the equity partners if we continue on the trajectory that we're going right now. So
that's considering 50% of law school admissions classes are female.
And have been for 20, 25 years. Yeah.
By the time a couple of years pass by, not just because of sexual harassment, but so many other factors, women just aren't staying in the, the rising to the hierarchy of their various employment settings. And the ones that do are the trailblazers and are helping to improve the situations, but we need more.
I don't know that that answered your question, but yes, we do look at other professions.
I'd say it does. And I think what it also does is it makes what you're doing even more inspiring, because I don't think that any other profession is so far out ahead or area of life that that someone else did get it figured out and we just need to apply what they've learned. It's a real opportunity as you guys are troubleshooting and implementing and learning from what you put together. It's an opportunity for the legal profession to be leaders, which is what we're supposed to be doing.
Which is
So,
what we're supposed to be.
yeah.
Yes, thank you very
I
much.
really appreciate your answer and also obviously what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we appreciate your support, however you can provide it. We think that what we're doing is important and different from what other people are doing. And again, not to say that what other people are doing is wrong or not effective. But as I said, we're all about doing something that doesn't duplicate what other people are doing. And the facilitator I mentioned that we have for our pilot project is a Harvard Law professor. He is so gung-ho about this project. He told us a story about, I think it was his father who was in the military, and basically when the guys, high up guys, they started talking about the women in sexual ways, and his father just basically said, "We don't do that here," and it just totally shut it down. So he gets it, he really gets it.
For those of you who are participating this evening, if you are lawyers, please go onto our website and join our organization. Actually, even if you aren't lawyers,
we have non-lawyers.
We do, and we have men as well as women, and women lawyers on guard. We would really like your support.
I was honestly very shocked to, read about the judge's comment, who was one of the victims or survivors. That was quite shocking to me. There's definitely, a perception that, lawyers are, have all the power, or they have the tools to kind of address any sorts of harassment. And it's really shocking to know that even a person in such a position can be, harassed, and, that person feels a little helpless in kind of addressing the situation. That was
Law
quite
professors too. We heard from law professors as well. We couldn't put everybody's comments on our slide presentation. As Corey said, we received 50 some pages of quotes from people who responded, but we did hear from law professors too.
And
what would be your ideal, sorry.
No, I was going to say,
what would be your ideal reporting system?
Well, the reporting system has to go hand in hand with the culture of the employment setting, because you can have the best reporting system, but if you face retaliation after you report, no one's going to report. So it's sort of, you can't separate one from the other necessarily. But one of the things that we have been exploring is an independent reporting system, so that the first report doesn't necessarily have to go to your employer if you think that that's going to be harmful to you or they're not going to do anything. There are these reporting systems that report into I'll call it a website. It's a secure repository, if you will. And what happens is you report, you give the details, et cetera, the name of the person. Then if somebody reports about the same person, you get a little ping. Now, it doesn't tell you who has been harassed, and it doesn't necessarily put you in contact with them. But what it does is it indicates to you that, first of all, you weren't crazy. You know, it wasn't like what you were wearing that day. That this person is out there harassing other people. And so what happens is you may be more motivated now to report to your employer, or you know, if it's a place where you can actually report to the disciplinary system, that's even better. But it needs to be a safe reporting system. It needs to be in an environment in which reporting is taken seriously and something's done about it. It needs to have an independent investigation, not just, you know, a whitewash. And it needs to have consequences at the end. And if all those things, and transparency, so we know that something happened. And if all those things are in place, what people tell me is that you'll actually get more reporting for a certain period of time, because people now feel safe to report. You know, those 86% that aren't reporting, you will now see those 86, or at least, you know, a great deal of it. And at some point, the reporting and the consequences will shut it down somewhat. Might not do away with it totally, but now the harassers know they're not going to get away with it as easily as they were before.
Consequences really need to revert back to the person who did the reporting. It doesn't necessarily have to be widespread, and the punishment or what happens to the harasser really has to be on a sliding scale. I mean, you're not going to just automatically terminate someone's employment depending on what actually happened. So there's different levels of what can happen to the person who's doing the harassing, but those consequences need to be told to the person who reported.
So if anyone else has any question, please feel free to ask. So we are kind of 15 minutes, you know, more than our time, but, you know, if there is interest in kind of continuing the conversation, we can definitely kind of, you know, continue. But otherwise, we have shared the links, and I'll definitely share the link to the report as well as a copy of the presentation to all those who attended today. And Corey and Corinne are, you know, always quite accessible in kind of answering your questions. And so you please do make use of that, you know, their resources and their, you know, willingness to kind of share their knowledge and time, because they really believe in this cause. So if there are no further questions, we could kind of wrap this event here. And we should definitely take this conversation. Don't take it as, you know, the end of it, but maybe a beginning of, you know, more collaboration and work going forward. So I would like to thank Ms. Corey Amron and Ms. Corinne Power for conducting this, you know, very crucial survey and kind of sharing the results with us. It's definitely very, it's an eye opener for sure, and shocking in many ways. So thank you so much for joining our alumni organization and sharing your thoughts with us. And thank you to all the attendees for participating in this discussion. And let's all stay together in these conversation and make sure we, you know, and you know, one last question to Corey and Corinne is like, what would be an action step we as the alumni organization can take or contribute towards mitigating? If there is any action step, we are more than happy to share it with our membership.
Well, I think the first thing is to talk about the results to the people around you. I know that in some employment settings, it's not easy and it's not safe necessarily to talk to your managing person, but to share widely, I think, is the first step. And if you feel that you have a situation in which your management would be open to hearing this, certainly share with them. I've got plenty of these that I can actually, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this to you, but I have some physical copies of these things that I could send to people. And, you know, more than happy to have more conversations with people. Would love to have you nominate some men to participate in our active male ally push. We're looking
Could
for,
always use more donations
Oh,
for promoting the work that we do, especially the conversations with men.
yes, we hate to ask for money, but we need to.
Right.
We are a volunteer group. Corrine and I are total volunteers. And although I think we're spending all of our time on these, this is not all that we do. I mean, we do, as Corrine mentioned, we do a lot of work in a lot of other areas too. So yeah, we appreciate your support in any way.
Thank you so much.
Let's see.
Sorry, Corrine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a wonderful evening, and all of you have a wonderful evening, and stay tuned for more events, and let's keep the conversations going. Thank you. And
Bye-bye.
I'm so sorry. I have to apologize to Ms. Barbara for, such a comment that was highly unnecessary. I truly apologize, for the inconvenience, and it was not respectful. So on behalf of all the organizations, I do apologize for such a comment. And hopefully it was a one-time event, and hopefully we can take it, go forward. But thank you and good night, and let's be respectful to each other and try to do good work to make this world a better place.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.